actually undertaking what I've called the third industrial revolution. It's a complete transformation. It's going digital, like many industries have gone digital. And the effect of that is manyfold. It's speeding up product development, it's changing economies of scale, so making things in one country is maybe different now. It's also being led by some extraordinary technological changes in everything from batteries to electric cars, and in particular to new materials that we never used to have before, custom-made materials that will be made specially for particular applications. We've already seen carbon fiber become a very heavily used in the aerospace industry, and it's becoming more used in the car industry. But there'll be even newer, more exotic materials appearing, which also will change. And then we have completely new manufacturing systems that never existed before. One of the most exciting that we've seen is 3D printing, as it's popularly called. It's actually called additive manufacturing. And in fact, there's 20, 30 different forms of 3D printing, and everything from jewelry to pottery to some of the components for the next generation of aero engines are going to be made with 3D printers. They're not going to be made in the same way. They're not going to be made with the same materials. And all these things have a very big impact on the business of supply chain management and logistics, because we have new materials, new production techniques, and new economics. Well, one of the big changes we're going to see, and we're already beginning to with driverless cars, is automation. And that's automation from factory robots right through to new robotic systems in factories. And this automation allows the driverless car, a vehicle, to proceed on the roads without somebody taking any intervention at all. So we will see remotely controlled delivery trucks. We will see remotely controlled ships. We'll see ghost ships, ships that sail the seas with no crew. Perhaps they might be accompanied by a ship that has a crew on it, but they'll leave port and they'll arrive at their destination with no intervention at all. We will see, as we're already doing, the rise of small aircraft type vehicles, drones as we call them, and they'll be used for everything from surveying, perhaps pipelines and rail infrastructure, to agricultural uses and delivering goods. We've already got some delivery services underway in Europe and in Africa, delivering pharmaceuticals, for instance, and medical supplies or important spare parts. Drones are really cheap. They're a fraction of the cost of a helicopter. They don't cost a lot of money. There's one here at your exhibition today, which I saw sitting in a corner. So this is a whole new industry emerging as well. So that is going to affect transportation options in the future. So along with changing the way some things are made in the countries they're going to be made in, actually delivering them and getting them to the consumer or to other factories will change as well. And then thirdly, some people will say, well, why do you need any delivery systems at all in the future if you have additive 3D printing manufacturing? Because if you've got a factory somewhere and you suddenly need a spare part, then maybe you 3D print it. What you actually then deliver is not a physical item, but a piece of software. And that software produces the part you want on the scene. Now we're a long way from that, but we're heading there because the first 3D printer has already gone up into space, and there's now one sitting in the space station, and it's already printed a wrench for them to use in the space station. Well, in the short term, we will start to see some of these manufacturing technologies merge with traditional manufacturing. So for instance, we will see carbon fiber extensively used in aircraft at the moment. So that's changed, the supply of aluminium and the supply of rivets. You don't need them. You then start to see carbon fiber appear more in motor cars. So BMW are now using it, so it's gone from supercars like McLarens to BMWs, and then eventually it'll work through to Fords and Fiats and other things as well. So you'll see new materials there. And that's a very different supply chain, because carbon fiber begins as something that resembles fishing line in rayon factories in Japan. And its production is more like textile making, it's like weaving than it is. So a car factory of the future there doesn't have, as the BMW electric car factories have, they don't have big stamping machines, they don't have welding machines, they have none of that, they don't even have big paint shops. These are very quiet, small format factories. So those changes we're already seeing, and they will grow. Now, of course, they won't completely replace traditional manufacturing as you know it, but they will make increasing incursions into it. Into the slightly more medium term, you'll see that these technologies, they're not necessarily very expensive because they break the mold of economics. Now, if you wanted to make a car 10, 20 years ago, you really needed to make 1 million of them to make any money, unless you were Ferrari or Lamborghini or something. But that's beginning to change. We've seen new car makers. We've seen Elon Musk and Tesla. Apple very likely will be making cars, or at least be involved with car making in the future. So we'll see new car makers. They'll have different economies of scale. They may well be more localized. And we'll see production generally in manufacturing often become much more localized with smaller volumes and more customized. So for instance, here in Dubai, they may well be making their own cars, but they can very easily start customizing cars with these additive techniques because one-off things become relatively less expensive to do. So a whole customizing repair business, you start to see that becoming more and more, that's medium term. Far out in the future, do we have, as Star Trek used to have, Jean-Luc Picard, he had this little machine called tea, Earl Grey hot, and it would just make it for him. That's way out there. But we're heading into this world where you engineer from the atoms up. You engineer from molecules. Computer-aided design and development and technology enables that. And so you start to see building things from very small atomic levels up with all these new techniques. So you then will start to see some very, very interesting, strange properties in materials. You'll see metals that are part hybrid, part plastic. You'll certainly have batteries that will give you 5 times the endurance you will have at the moment, so you'll be able to jump in an electric car and drive for 500 miles, no problem, without recharging. You will see electric aeroplanes. You might even be flying on an electric aeroplane in 20, 25 years' time on a small scale. The very attractive proposition there. So we will see this really shift away from certainly the internal combustion engine. And we will also possibly see a huge revolution in energy technologies because the battery, and especially if we can start using batteries on the grid or in our homes, you'll see renewable energy completely transformed. At the moment you have all this solar power out there, but nobody's using it. And there are times of the day where it's just got no use, and Germany has big solar power. When you can store it in batteries, you'll probably see more homes and possibly some companies as well go off-grid. So we may at home be generating our own electricity. And again, that's a combination of materials, new manufacturing technologies, and some associated science and ventures as well. So that's my theory. I see the Dubai police here have got a BMW i8, which is an electric car. If you have the battery breakthrough, then that will be faster than it already is, lighter, and instead of having a range of several hundred kilometers, it would be much faster and much further. Young people understand computers. They've got heads in the computers all the time. All these technologies rely on software, in particular computer-aided design, simulation, and virtual reality. This is where products exist today. You make them in a virtual form, and you don't turn them into a physical product until right towards the end of it. So if you want to know what's going on, watch what the young people are doing with these technologies. And that's the things that you need to prepare for, because they will, to some extent, indicate the direction that things may go. If you sit in your boardroom and you try and plan it, you won't be right, and you'll find that you could be in big trouble in the future.